how one becomes a vice president of product management at McAfee.
I don't know if there's a formula, but there's certainly a certain set of catalysts that I feel that happens in everybody's journey. And certainly in mine, I was always uh, obsessed with solving customer problems. The problem may not be new, but the solution might be a very novel one. And so, how do you continuously create that growth mindset to experiment and try and iterate till you get the right combination of solution that delights? I think that's really what allowed me to continuously excel in every role that I was in. And I guess people were kind around me to appreciate that. Why would I promote somebody as a chief product officer at a large NASDAQ-listed company? And I think my answer to that is very simple. We look at everybody in three lenses. It's your functional skills, which is the product management skills, the art and science of figuring out and making good decisions. The second bucket is the leadership skills, which is, hey, are you able to articulate the story? Are you an amazing storyteller? Are you able to influence people? And the third bucket is your domain skills. Do you really understand and are you passionate about that industry? You need to really love hanging out with the persona, day in the life of your user and understand what's happening as a trend.
So now, what makes one leaving job that is titled Vice President of Product at McAfee to found the Institute of Product Leadership?
My journey for moving into that startup was really driven by passion, not so much at that time as a business model. And I realized that when I was hiring for setting up my product management team in India, I couldn't hire. I went through hundreds of resumes from top B schools all around the country. Money was not a problem. We could pay a lot in McAfee. I still couldn't hire a single product manager. And on that long 20-hour flight back from India, I realized that on one hand, we have the highest concentration of engineers and IT professionals in this part of the world, and yet we have very little product thinking, very little product management discipline and understanding. And so I followed the passion and wanted to kind of build a systematic way for anybody to become a product manager. And so that's how the Institute of Product Leadership got created, arguably the world's first business school for product people.
Hold up. Before we dive in, let's give a shout out to Appmixer, the game changer in SaaS automation. Appmixer is a no-code platform that helps SaaS companies ship AI agents in their products in days. The way it works is simple. You build agents in Appmixer and deploy them in your product. As a result, your users become far more productive and you gain a competitive edge in the AI race. AI is changing the SaaS industry, bringing both challenges and opportunities. And that's exactly what this podcast is all about, tackling the day-to-day challenges of product management. In each episode, I sit down with product management heroes who face these challenges every day. I ask the questions, they bring the practical answers. Without further ado, let's see who's joining us today.
Hello, everybody. For today's episode, it's my great pleasure to welcome Mr. Pinkesh Shah. Hi, Pinkesh. How's it
Hey,
going? All good today?
absolutely. Looking forward to an amazing day.
Perfect, perfect. So thanks for joining us for today's episode, where we will be discussing basically a comparison between product management roles in corporations and startups, and also how to move up the ladder when you're a product manager and want to become, let's say, a chief product officer at some company. There will be some other topics to discuss as well. And we have a great guest who actually started as engineer, moved to product management space, later became a vice president of product management at McAfee, that I guess everyone knows. It's a multi-billion-dollar company. Then actually Pinkesh went back to, I think, India, right? There you started the Institute of Product
Right.
Leadership, which was just coming from the corporate to really founding something new. Then Pinkesh decided to actually get back for a little while, became a chief product officer at Qualys, a listed company. And a few years later, he founded Delight Loop, which is a um, product that he's currently focusing on. So a lot of things, I guess, to discuss today. So Pinkesh, maybe let's start with the fact that you had a quite a journey from this corporate product leadership to founding the Institute of Product Leadership and then building Delight Loop. What inspired you to shift from building products to building product leaders as a part of Product Institute of Product Leadership, and then returning back to building startup called Daylight Loop as its founder?
Yeah, Jerry, it has been a very interesting journey at the very least. And as an engineer who accidentally became a product manager many years ago, I still reflect upon the day when the CEO walked up, and this was a small young startup in Houston, and the CEO walks up and says, we'd like to relook at your compensation model for all three of the engineering managers that we were at this company. And the compensation model is going to be essentially taking away the bonus tied to company performance versus your product performance. So you will only get paid the bonus if your product does well, independent of what the company does. And as I accepted that offer or change, little did I know that the entire career trajectory was actually changing for me. I still feel that was my day for accidentally moving into product management without the title of a product manager. I was still the engineering manager. I was still um, pretty much running the same team, the same product, the same way. But what really happened is the focus moved away from being code centric to customer centric. And so instead of looking at how do we refactor the code, and instead of looking at, how do I make the architecture more clean and efficient from an engineering and technology perspective, the focus shifted more, who's the customer? And how do we build things that's going to truly delight that customer? Because if that customer is not delighted, they're not going to buy more. If they're not going to buy more, I'm not going to get paid my bonus, because remember, my bonus is now tied back to that product revenue. And so this very unique product author model really was remarkable, and quite frankly, that was my segue into product management. Sometimes I always share that you may accidentally move into it, but you still have to have the aptitude of kind of being obsessed with customer and solving problems. And usually that's the journey that I've kind of taken, right? Since then, obviously leading several product management teams, several product design teams, several product marketing teams throughout my career, and uh, you know, uh, now getting back to my startups roots to start the Light Loop, where we want to really bring and leverage AI to build human connections, helping marketeers generate leads predictably. That's the AI agentic software startup that I'm now involved in.
Perfect. So actually, getting back to that story where you accidentally became a product manager, that was back in what company was that?
That was at Pentasave that eventually became NetIQ through acquisition in Houston. I'd say 20 years ago.
Hmm. Okay, let's start then with okay. So basically, that was your beginning of the product management journey. So then, how one becomes a vice president of product management at McAfee from there?
Yeah, it's a great question. I don't know if there's a formula, but there's certainly a certain set of catalysts that I feel um, that happens in everybody's journey. And certainly in mine, I was always uh, obsessed with solving customer problems, figuring out a way to understand what the real problem is, because often we feel we know the problem until you actually get into deeper user insights and spend time, understanding what the customer is going through, what does a day in a life look like. But having the acumen to understand what that problem is, and then continuously iterating, what a lot of people call, hypothesis design, is really to kind of go back and say, look, here's different way of solving that problem. The problem may not be new, but the solution might be a very novel one. And so how do you continuously create that growth mindset to experiment, and try and iterate till you get the right combination of solution that delights. I think that's really what allowed me to continuously excel in every role that I was in. And I guess people were kind around me to recognize that, to appreciate that, and perhaps that's how I got to climb the so-called corporate ladder, in some sense, right? So I think to me, there are three lens, if you will, that now if I reflect back and as a hiring manager, right, why would I promote somebody as a chief product officer at a large, NASDAQ-listed company? This is the question I get asked all the time, where I have a large product team globally in the United States, but also internationally. And a lot of these people will have the same question, like, hey, when do I know I'm ready to get that next promotion? And I think my answer to that is very simple. We look at everybody in three lenses, right? It's your functional skills, which is the product management skills, the art and science of figuring out and making good decisions about everything from, problem to discovery to mapping that to a prototype, validation, pricing, packaging, messaging, branding. There's a lot of these skills that you absolutely need to be good at. And so that's the first bucket, the functional skills. The second bucket, Jerry, I find it very important, is the leadership skills, which is, hey, are you able to articulate uh, the story? Are you an amazing storyteller? Are you able to influence people? People who don't report to you, people who have no reason to listen to you, but are you still able to influence them? And this is very important as a product manager in any organization, to be cross-functionally savvy. And I think the third bucket is your domain skills. Do you really understand and are you passionate about that industry? Whether it's cybersecurity or e-commerce or retail or medical, you need to really love hanging out with the persona, uh, you know, uh, day in the life of your user, and understand what's happening as a trend. So to me, the combination of functional skills, domain skills, and leadership skills is really the recipe to kind of move up faster, to answer your question more directly. And not that I had all this wisdom when I was in the junior roles, but now that I reflect back, that would be my recommendation for the audience and the readers, um, that you need to make sure that you're good in all three. Just being a great product management skill set is not enough. You need to have that conflict management, art of storytelling, negotiation, influencing skills, equally important as you move up in senior roles.
Mhm. I think that's a great comment, and definitely some of our listeners will be happy to build upon your experience. So now, what makes one leaving job that is titled Vice President of Product at McAfee to found the Institute of Product Leadership?
Yeah, the journey has been super exciting, and quite frankly, it's one of those things that you balance the logic of what you want to do with your career versus the passion of what you want to spend time on. And my journey for moving into that startup was really driven by passion, not so much at that time as a business model. And I realized that when I was hiring for setting up my product management team in India, I couldn't hire. I went through hundreds of resumes from top B schools all around the country. Money was not a problem. We could pay a lot in McAfee. I still couldn't hire a single product manager. And so we took, two of our best engineers in the company at that time in Bangalore and moved them into a product management role and then trained them, through a variety of programs available in the United States. And on that long 20-hour flight back from India, I realized that on one hand, we have the highest kind of concentration of engineers and IT professionals in this part of the world, and yet we have very little product thinking, very little product management discipline and understanding. And so I followed the passion and wanted to kind of build a systematic way for anybody to become a product manager. And so that's how the Institute of Product Leadership got created, arguably the world's first business school for product people. And so now the Institute of Product Leadership runs in multiple cities, multiple campuses. Almost 6,000 people have graduated through a variety of programs, including a full-fledged government-approved degree program called the Executive MBA in Product Leadership. And so we've been very fortunate to help hundreds and thousands of people change their trajectory. While I was an accidental product manager, I wanted to make sure that there was a systematic way for people to do this instead of waiting for accidents and luck. And so, in some sense, it was close to my heart when we started this. And so, that Institute of Product Leadership still runs, very successfully and helping transition a lot of engineers, a lot of business analysts, a lot of project managers, a lot of sales and marketing folks into a more full-fledged, skilled product marketing, product management discipline. So that's kind of how that journey started, Jerry.
Great. And you were one of the founders, or you were like, it was your idea, and you were the one founder that founded this institute, right?
Yeah, initially it was me spending the time, and then we obviously created a board of advisors to help because we also wanted to turn this into an industry initiative, Jerry. This was unlike a typical B school where we would run through a theory, take an exam and get a degree. We wanted to kind of flip it. I'll give you a simple example on how we've brought that product thinking into education space. Because once you're a product manager, you're always a product manager, and you're always going to use that first principles method to solve any problem in life, right? Like one of the classes in the art of storytelling, as I mentioned to you, is one of the leadership skills. The assessment is not a multiple choice question paper, which is typically how most academic institutions offer. The exam is actually a live TED Talk where third party external jury is going to come in the audience and you have to get on the stage and practice your storytelling, your public speaking skills. Because that's the true science of have you built the skill or not. Same thing with user experience design. The examination is a live Shark Tank type of project where you're building a real interface for a real startup, and then you pitch that in front of hiring managers who are now grading you on that assignment, on that skill building assessment. And so we kind of flipped it into more experiential learning. And I think that was very useful in the early days. So it was all driven through the industry, even though I kind of helped pioneered it. We're lucky enough to get a lot of support from a lot of industry leaders, Jerry.
Sounds great. That sounds great. So that was like the first kind of like you moved up the corporate ladder, then you founded a new thing, and you stayed 5 years building the IPL. So what motivated you to come back to the corporation like Qualys?
Yeah, I enjoy the 0 to 1 building. I enjoy creating newer capabilities, a lot more than kind of running and optimizing an existing machinery, right? And again, there are different types of product people in this world. There are some who love the fact that they can go from 100 million revenue to 500 million. There are some who will manage $1 billion revenue and take it to five. Different skill sets, in my opinion. Still product management, but different approach. I enjoy the aspect of kind of innovating rapidly, creating something new, building category defining products is something that I've always been fascinated with. And so when the opportunity got itself, presented itself to kind of be to join a corporate company in the cybersecurity space, which has been my domain passion, if you will. And the company at the Institute of Product Leadership was running well. It needed a different type of product leader now. So we found a CEO who now runs the Institute of Product Leadership, also an ex-product manager from Oracle. And so the institute is now running very well under his leadership. And I wanted to move back to my cybersecurity, solving some very interesting problems in the marketing domain, demand generation, domain, but also in the risk quantification, which I feel is a very unsolved problem in cybersecurity right now. So that was kind of my trigger to come back to and join Qualys.
Okay. Okay. And then another plot twist, I'd say. After spending 2 years, well, 1 year in BeyondTrust and 2 years in Qualys, you actually decided to found Delight Loop. So, what's Delight Loop about, and what fascinated you about that idea to actually leave the Chief Product Officer position at Qualys to found something new?
Yeah, yeah, no, great question. I think similar passion for customer problem and solving, obsessed with solving problems and creating delight, I think kicked in again. During my college tenure, it became very clear that marketing has become very, very expensive in terms of the customer acquisition cost, especially in B2B. It's also become very unpredictable. So on one hand, we're spending a lot more money to acquire the same customer through the entire pipeline generation, lead nurturing process. On the other hand, it is becoming very unpredictable. Uh, and there's no shortage of tools. There's probably 300 plus tools in marketing automation, sales automation, revenue intelligence space that that we see, and quite frankly, very, very uncoordinated. They don't really build an ecosystem as a block. And one of the things that I really love about Appmixer is the same thing, right? Now you guys help companies integrate these different data flows so that you can have business sense coming out of it faster. And so I felt the problem that we wanted to solve, and I saw that firsthand, at the corporate world, is how do we create a systems-driven process, an automation platform that can drive the growth of leads and connect the prospects to the brand predictably, right? So really, we took at three different problem statements, right? How do we generate leads, high quality, high intent leads, nurture them predictably? Second, how do we close deals faster? Once the lead is in the pipeline, it still takes a couple months. Sometimes enterprise customers take about 6 months to 9 months to close. How do we shorten that path and reduce the cost of acquisition? So how do we close deals faster? And third, how do we reduce churn? For larger companies, sometimes even 1% churn, if you can save that churn from a renewal perspective, that's millions of dollars. And so how do we bring predictability in each of these three outcomes? And there wasn't one. There was not a single tool, not a single system out there. And so having the problem, facing the problem firsthand, I decided I wanted to kind of go build this. And that's why the Delight Loop startup got created, where we're essentially trying to build uh, a autonomous marketing platform where we will have a series of digital agents, and again, AI agents are the buzz of the century or the buzz of the year, I guess. And so we also want to kind of build a lot of these co-pilots for marketing, right? So think of this as just like you have a co-pilot for developers. Can we create AI digital assistants for each of the individual specialized marketing functions, from event management to performance marketing to marketing operations? to and so on and so forth. So that's what we're setting up to do in Delight Loop, and I I like the concept of bringing delight continuously, which is really the whole purpose of building a good product or a good service, is to kind of create that delight predictably. And that's why it was a very easy choice to call the company Delight Loop, because we want to kind of help brands create delight for their end customers continuously. So one of the first version, Jerry, that we just rolled out is called Gifty. So it's our first AI agent, and Gifty does one thing very well, which is it helps hyper personalize and send the right gift to the right prospect at the right time. And that's what Gifty does. And we've seen that when you use Gifty, customers have been able to get 30% more responses compared to their digital outreach, right? Because in today's world, I think while there's a lot of AI SDR and email hyper personalization and LinkedIn pings happening, which is great, but a digital outreach is still becoming very spammy for reaching your end customers. A physical gift, thoughtfully presented, will create a lot more deeper connection with your end prospect or customer. So that's what we're trying to do is at scale. How do we leverage AI to help you build human connections? And that's what we're trying to work on with our first agent that's out now called Gifty in the Delight Loop platform.
That's awesome. That sounds really exciting, and I wish you all the best on this journey back as a founder of a little startup. So now getting back to product management, if you look back at your experience when you were leading product at large enterprises compared to early stage environments, what's the most surprising thing that you see when you compare these two worlds?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think the skill sets that you need, I think, are uniform across the board. Whether you are building a small startup with two people and a dog, or you're managing and leading 100 people product teams in a large multi-billion-dollar company, I feel the mindset is the bigger difference, but skill sets are more or less the same and similar because you need them in both situations. I think where you spend your time is really the biggest difference, right? So if I were to kind of plot out the journey and just reflecting back, having worked in multiple startups now, having started a few companies, having worked in very large companies, as you pointed out, my career has kind of had the fortunate experience of doing both multiple times. And if I draw back, I think it's the design time that you spend, right? So let me explain. The the hypothesis design is where you'd spend a lot more time in a startup than you probably would do in a more mature company, right? And so how should I design my experiments? Because in a startup, speed is very important. You have limited resources, a lot that you can do, but only a few that you should be doing, right? And so how do you go from that lot that can be done versus a few that should be done? I think that requires a lot of design elements and iterations and growth mindset, with hypothesis design being a very, very important skill, very, very important area that you need to spend. And so from hypothesis design, you eventually move to customer design. From customer design, you eventually move to kind of product design. And from product design, you eventually move to kind of revenue design. And so if you look at that journey to go from a startup to a large company, it's where you spend most of the time. Not that revenue is not important in the early stage of your startup as well. Of course, it is important, but most of the time that you would be spending would be in hypothesis design, making sure you take the right turns at every junction, because one wrong turn can kind of set you back. Um, couple months, couple years, and maybe that's the end of the startup just because you run out of resources. As you mature enough, you start thinking more and more about kind of customer design, which means, can you work with customers now? Can you find the right customers? How do you say no to a certain set of characteristics of customers It's very important to build that design element of the prioritization so that you're picking the right customers, the right segments, and making sure that you're absolutely the best in that niche. I would call a lot of that work as customer design. You're working with a lot of pilot customers, design partners as you build out and validate a lot of your vision. And then when you mature from there, you have enough customers now, you have multiple versions of your product coming out, you now spend a lot more time in your product design, making sure that the user experience is amazingly, right to the point, making sure that you have nuances of different scenarios, of different situations and exception handling. You now have different types of customers, small and large, and the same product has to now cater to both, which means it needs to feel personalized to the smallest of the customer to your largest of your customer. That requires some serious amount of design, UX design, customer design, interface design, the overall experience, I would say the CX, right? The customer experience, not just the UX. So you spend a lot of time as a product manager, in that zone. And then as you get to a lot more mature companies, a lot more larger organizations, the focus kind of shifts a little bit more to revenue design. How do I find new areas of revenue? How do I find and unlock new products in adjacent markets? And how do I now create a portfolio of products that helps me also upsell and cross-sell into the existing base, but also find net new? And so a lot of that time gets spent in portfolio management, product strategy, revenue modeling, pricing. I call a lot of that as revenue design. So that's kind of the progression, if you will, Jerry, in the life of a product manager as you stitch it back to the scale with which of the companies that you're working with, from hypothesis design to customer design to product and UX design to finally revenue growth design. So that's the framework that I would recommend. Depends on which type of company you work for.
That was a great comment on like how this evolves with the scale. But now, if we take a look at, I think, a general opinion about like how startups and large organizations differ, I think a lot of people think that in large organizations, structure often slows things down, but in startups, a lack of structure can be chaotic, right? And so I'd like to ask you, where's the sweet spot and how product managers navigate that?
Yeah, I think a lot of times people confuse systems design with structure, and a lot of people confuse structure with process. And so I want to kind of distinguish between these three things so that we're kind of very clear about um, what is expected of the product manager. To me, even in a young startup, in an early stage startup, in a sub 10 million revenue startup, uh, structure is very, very important. You may not have as many processes necessary in a small team of 3 people or 10 people, but you definitely need a lot of structure. So this is a myth that startups are chaotic. Yes, they are chaotic, but that doesn't mean that by definition a product manager should just give up all possible structures, all possible frameworks, and just kind of live the day adventurously every day. It's a very dangerous way to run a company, and I wouldn't recommend that. Uh, Having said that, larger companies have to have more process in addition to the structure. And the reason that process is important because what's at stake is the difference between the young startup and the large company having 5,000 customers. And what's at stake is that one wrong decision, if you don't catch that through a good process, can create tremendous amount of damage. A one wrong bug shipped out, a one wrong change in the user experience, which is not thought through, a one small, flip in the way your pricing change can actually create tremendous amount of damage from a customer productivity perspective, from a customer usage perspective. And we've seen examples, including the more recent ones, where a large cybersecurity company had a small little glitch, and all of a sudden all airlines stopped working, thanks to the software that got updated on every single machine. And so, whether it's a technical change, whether it is a pricing change, whether it is a user experience change, these things have tremendous amount of impact at scale when you have thousands of customers. And so it's important to have process at the risk of slowing you down to also double check and triple check certain things before you release, before something goes out as a delivery from the company and the organization to the customer. So so I would say it's a good balance to keep. In a startup, you may not need so many processes in terms of the speed with which you want to make decisions. Go back to what we said earlier. Hypothesis design and continuous experimentation culture is super important in a startup environment, right? And so you don't want enough processes, enough checkpoints, and enough gates to slow you down. And the impact is also low. Think about the risk of this. When you only have 10 customers, changing something is no big deal. You can start calling every single one of them personally and make sure that they're okay with the change. You can't really do that when you have 5,000 customers. So, to me, structure is important in both scenarios. Process is the delta, is the difference on how much you want to implement and institute the process in a smaller company, which I don't recommend you do much of, all the way to the larger company.
Now, talking about speed, I think we are living in very exciting times when AI is everywhere, and I'd like to also discuss your view on how AI influences product leadership. Like, how do you see the product manager's role evolving in the next 5 years? Maybe that's too much, right? Maybe just next 1 or 2 years. How does AI reshape the world of product management?
I think you're right, Jerry. The pace with which we are making progress in that space, predicting anything beyond 9 months is actually a futile exercise. Just the speed with which things are changing, right? I think it's an exciting era for product managers in the AI first world that we're entering now. And I know there's a lot of gloom and doom scenarios being painted. I think there's a lot of people worried about, is AI going to take up my job? And yes, AI will take a few jobs in a few sectors, in a few parts of our workforce in the next 3 years, next 2 years, that we're living in. So I agree with that. But to me, the fear of AI taking jobs away is the wrong one. Instead, the fear should be, if I don't know AI, I'm not going to get promoted, right? So to me, flip it positively. If you know AI, you're going to get a better growth, a better role, a better progressive career path, as a product manager. So to me, this is a very positive news. I think the speed with which we can experiment and prototype has gone from 3 months to 3 days to now 3 hours. I mean, there are so many amazing tools from V0 to Bolt to Cursor and many others where you tell, the vision of what you want to build and the entire interface is created. No more waiting for UX designers to prototype, no more learning Figma skills, no more, leveraging engineers to kind of go and help you build that first prototype. You have a vision, you have the customer insight, you can translate that into a working prototype in a couple hours, and next day you're now testing it with the real user. The speed with which you can now do that level of testing is enormously helping product managers move faster, to be able to build the right product, and find the right fitment, in terms of the problem solution fit. So I think that's a very, very amazing development that AI allows us to be able to do that. The second thing that I feel is super important is the research process itself of how you construct the product, right from understanding competitive analysis to user insights to, I mean, English is the new programming language, as a lot of people say now, and I truly agree. I mean, your skills in building the right prompt is everything. It's actually even more important than learning Python, because if you can't ask the right question, then you will not get the right responses from a lot of these LLMs, and ChatGPT being the most popular one. And so how do we now build the skills around using the right set of AI tools to automate the process of building and expediting the process of building? Is the second area that I think has a tremendous amount of impact in how product managers will operate in the next year or so compared to the last 10 years on how they may have been doing, right? And so a lot of user story creation, mundane project management tasks that a product manager was doing before is no longer needed. Now that's good news and bad news. If you are a scrum master, and if you're a project manager, and if you're a product owner, if all you're doing is writing user stories and translating, like a business analyst, if you're simply translating something, from a product manager to give that to an engineer to go work on, that's going to get automated. And so yes, AI is going to take that job away. But I think if you are a product owner, if you're a technical product manager, if you're an associate product manager, your job should be moving up the ladder using the cognitive science, using the behavioral understanding, using some of the leadership skills that we talked about, and move up to kind of get to more decision making roles in product management, senior product management, director of product management. And so those roles will do very, very well. The kind of more junior, mundane, repetitive roles are probably going to get impacted with AI. So that's kind of my thought. The third area that I feel that every product manager needs to skill up is, how do you monetize and explain AI from a customer context perspective? While AI can do amazing things, from recommendations to predictions to a variety of other outcomes, um, how do you make this explainable AI? A lot of people call it XAI, right? So just like the user experience is supposed to be intuitive, the outcome of an algorithm needs to be intuitive for that end user. And then how do you then monetize this? That's going to get disruption. I mean, we're already saying SaaS is dead, while it's a very cliche and a very popular headlines right now. I really think SaaS is dead from a different angle. The subscription-based modeling is probably dead, in my opinion. And a lot of people will debate this over the next year or so. We'll see how it pans out. But to me, the fact that I'm creating a piece of software, giving that as a service to the end customer, and that you have to pay me a monthly fee, seems like a counterintuitive concept compared to, let me now charge you on outcomes. Maybe let me charge you on usage. If you use more, you pay more. If I generate more outcomes for you, if I generate more results for you. So think of this as RAS, results as a service, or OAS, outcome as a service, as opposed to software as a service. So I think we'll see a lot of seismic shifts in the way we monetize, in the way we position and take our products to the market. And I think that's the role of a product manager. And that's why AI is going to open up tremendous amount of new opportunities for product managers to excel if you kind of embrace these things.
I really like the concept of RAS, results as a service. That sounds really cool. How have you, maybe just to close this up, how have you applied that in Daylight Loop? Did you think about it? Like, do you have maybe a pricing strategy ready for this time?
So it's going to take a while before people kind of get accustomed to this. The venture capital industry is going to have to get adjusted to this non-SaaS model, because it's unpredictable. On one hand, it's unpredictable when you have results as a service, but what if the results don't happen? Now you don't have this nice little hockey curve predictable stick of revenue, right? So I understand the operational challenges that a vendor, a organization, the investor will have to go through. But to me, that's less important than what the customer experience looks like, what the customer preferences are. And I think a lot of customers are loving it. So, for example, we don't have a subscription-based service, for us. In fact, we're saying, hey, look, deliver human gifts, deliver physical nudges as part of your digital outreach as a marketing manager that you want to reach out to hundreds and thousands of people. Let's take a simple use case. We have a customer who's using the platform for webinars. And the use case is very simple. I've got a webinar coming up. I need 40 more people to register for this webinar with this ideal customer profile. The Delight Loop platform and the Gifty agent goes out, finds the ICP, sends a message to them, nurtures it on behalf of the brand, sends them a physical hyper-personalized gift for each recipient, because each recipient is different. We don't want to sell t-shirts, send water bottles to everybody as a blanket thing. We want to hyper-personalize. All of this to bring back 30% more attendees than what the marketing manager has. And so you pay for the gifts that are actually getting sent, but if you get the mark of 30% more attendees, now we have the right to ask you for a little outcome-based bonus. So our pricing is also at cost. Send the gifts to as many people as you want, but when we get you 30% more results for your webinar, which translates back into lots of revenue for you for that qualified lead that you're going to now convert that into an opportunity, we will now ask you for that outcome-based bonus. Customers love it because that way our skin is in the game. The product has to actually perform. Otherwise, you don't get your quote-unquote bonus or the outcome-based offering. So we've been very successful with this. And quite frankly, this is a great monetization model for us because we're able to, on an average, charge more to the end customer. And the customer doesn't mind because they were seeing the results of what they could not do otherwise. And so they're more open. Why stop at $20 a month? Why have this fixed $30 a month plan when the value to the customer could have been $300? Why leave that money on the table? And so it's actually helping us as an organization, as a vendor, but it's also helping the customer. And so I think that's the disruptive model that we're going to see a lot more in the coming months, where existing companies will have to change their pricing models, and new ones obviously are going to come up with this credit-based, usage-based, outcome and results-based metric in terms of their pricing.
Mm. Well, that all sounds great. It seems like Delight Loop is pretty much ready for this AI era with this strategy. Where do you see Delight Loop in let's say a year or two? How fast do you think you're gonna scale it? Maybe you can say something about the current numbers, like how big is the company and where do you see taking it in the upcoming months or years?
It's a very, very interesting and a difficult question to answer in some sense, right? As a founder, you're always very bullish, and there's no room for failure ever, is one way of thinking about it. As a practitioner, you always know there's always room for failure, and so you just have to execute right. But to me, I think converting that failure or the step down or a temporary setback and going back into that hypothesis design that I talked about earlier, I feel is a very important skill. I've had a chance to do that a few times now. We all are learners. I learn new things all the time. We all do, and so I certainly hope that we will not fail in that context. But I think to answer your question, we really see this as the future of marketing is going to change dramatically. And it's going to change dramatically in two ways or two dimensions, right? The future of marketing is going to change in the first dimension where you're not going to have as many people as you actually do today. Each vertical function of marketing, whether it's demand generation or brand and customer experience management or customer advocacy to event management and field activation, um, to performance marketing, to marketing operations, all of these functions are going to still need a leader, are going to still need somebody who runs it, but you're not going to need 10 layers of people under you. I think AI agents are going to help automate 80% of that work. And so you almost need like one good GTM engineer, as we call it now. And if that GTM engineer is enabled with tools from Delight Loop type of companies, you can pretty much run the show as if you have a 10-person team doing the work through one human. So I think there's going to be a tremendous amount of change in the way we think about teams, human teams augmented with AI agents in the marketing world. The second thing that's going to change dramatically is a lot of shelfware that sits around right now. It's actually one of the worst industries where you have so many tools, 1,000+ companies, each one doing a small little thing. Uh, and I think it's going to see consolidation. I think you're not needing today as a CMO. I've had to stitch 48 tools on an average, and through Zapier, through Make.com, and through many other utilities, you have to kind of become almost like an IT shop to make sure that the leads come from this area, gets nurtured here, gets sent through this other tool. You get the signal from this place here, and now you kind of stitch all this together. That's too much work. I think the newer autonomous marketing platforms, again, like Delight Loop and many others that we're building, is going to streamline all of that and go from 48 tools to 4. And so that's the next big thing that's going to happen in marketing, that we feel that every CMO, every CRO is now going to have a lot more consolidated, agentic AI-driven approach to create an outcome as opposed to making them go through and become an IT shop stitching all these tools together. So it's going to be significant reduction in program dollars and significant reduction in people dollars in terms of the overall marketing function. And that overall is healthy because your cost of acquisition now goes down. Your speed of acquisition goes up and your cost of acquisition goes down. So that's kind of why I'm super bullish on what's going to happen in the next few quarters and in a few years.
Perfect. I really like the notion where you meant that even if we fail, actually, that's like where we have some learnings. And one significant person on here in the, let's say, Czech venture space has a model like failing forward as a founder, as investor. And I think it's really important to embrace the failure and learn from the mistakes of that one did at the execution. So thank you for reminding that. I think that's a nice wrap up. I would have 5 more questions that I ask every guest in this podcast. So the first one is, what is your number one challenge at work?
I think finding more passionate people to join your startup, to join your company. um, Hiring is the number one challenge. I think as a founder, as a leader of the organization, and finding the right set of people. There's no shortage of people applying for positions, but are you really passionate about this particular problem that we're trying to solve? I think finding that fitment is the number one challenge. And we're hiring. So anybody who's looking at this, take a look at delightloop.com, and if you're an engineer, if you're a full stack engineer, if you're a UX designer, if you're a gifting designer, hey, we are hiring. So please connect with me.
If you could choose one key metric, the North Star, what that defines your success as a product leader, what would it be?
I think deliver delight. And I say that deliver delight in a quantified way. Is your customer so delighted, not satisfied, not happy, but truly delighted that they will now become your unsolicited, evangelist, and refer 10 more people, be an open recommendation engine for you whenever you need them. Like, to me, that's the North Star metric that every product manager needs to get to. Yes, revenue is important, but to me, revenue is a byproduct of a delighted customer base.
Well said. How do you collect feedback from your customers? What processes and tools do you use for that?
I think there's a lot of electronic, digital way of connecting and getting insights about how people are using your products, and tools like, Funnel Story, tools like, Pendo, tools like, there's lots of tools in the space that kind of helps you collect that feedback digitally. I sometimes feel, as much as it's possible and feasible, especially in the early stages of your career, every product manager should have a dedicated day. I usually, for me, that's Wednesday, is only dedicated to speaking with customers, getting their feedback. How are they doing? What challenges are they going through in the implementation of the product? Some novel ways of how they're using the product that you didn't know. And this happens all the time to me, especially for enterprise customers. We build so many features, and we thought this is the intended use of that feature. The customer is actually using it in a very different way. And so getting that insight is super important. So I would say the human connection of building that insights and understanding that customer journey is very, very important for a product manager. No matter how busy you are, you should never let go of that. You should never outsource that, never delegate that to anybody else, on the team. So that would be my strong recommendation.
Great. Then build versus buy. How do you decide?
Quite frankly, in today's world, there's so much available to quote unquote buy or integrate with that you don't really need to build a whole lot from scratch, right? I mean, a good example of the kind of amazing service that you're providing right now through these connectors and out of the box, capabilities that somebody can would have taken them months and years to get that right. And more than just getting them right, it's also the maintaining of those connectors, right? The maintaining of those integrations. And so to me, I would always prefer stay focused on your core value proposition of what you're building, buy everything else. Partner, slash buy everything else, is the way to kind of get there faster.
Mhm, mhm. Great. And my last question is what role do AI and AI agents play in your product strategy? If you could briefly share a specific use case you're aiming to solve with AI for your users. You already mentioned the Gifty that is out there in wild, right? Um, so maybe you can describe how it works, like maybe what tools did you use to make it work and how it's interconnected with different tools, and then maybe mention the next use case that you're thinking of in terms of the next AI agent that you plan to build. That would be really interesting.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, the one that's on production right now and is available for people to use is, like I said, is Gifty, and Gifty does really three things. It helps you find the right gift for the right person and send it to them at the right time, and it orchestrates the entire process of selection, discovery, physically sending the object, tracking the delivery of it, making sure that they take the call to action once they receive the box, once they receive the experience of the gifting, all of that done automatically, right? Completely done in the agentic way in that the AI will handle. Now, one of the things that's very important for Gifty to really do its job right is to be able to have integration with signals. So, who is the right buyer? So, let's say going back to that webinar example, we have a very large demand generation leader in a very large company. She runs 15 to 20 webinars in a year globally. And it's the same madness that she has to go through every single time, which is, hey, I need to find more people. I've bombarded everybody there is to bombard in my database of all the known contacts that I've had. I need now new, fresh set of people to come join my amazing webinars. And these webinars are very instructional, very informational. They are great value to the end customer, except that the end customer doesn't know them and hence doesn't show up, doesn't register. So so for them, finding the right set of ideal customer profile and fine tuning to make sure that they have a buying intent through a variety of other signals, working with other tools where they collect those signals, and how do we now prioritize them so that we are targeting the right set of people, making sure that we're sending the gifts to the right set of people, also at the right time. There's a job change that's happening that triggers a particular workflow in our backend system to say, okay, this person moved from this company to that company. When you change jobs, it's actually a perfect time to get in front of them to make sure that your product and your service is something that they're considering as part of their first 90-day strategy that they're going to build in that new company, right? And so, if there is a particular review, a bad review or a good review, right? Let's say there's a competitor review that somebody posted on through variety of these, G2, Gartner, Trust Radius. How do you now trigger that and say, okay, well, somebody has had a bad experience with your competitor. Now is the time to go and hit that person up with your value proposition And so the timing to be able to kind of build that insight is something that we have a module called Delight Sense. So Delight Sense brings these insights from your CRM. It brings your insights from the external, marketplace, and kind of prioritizes that. And then the second module we have is Delight Engage. So now that you've decided that I want to send something to Jiri, let's say, because Jiri is the right profile and it's the right time for me, how do I get attention with Jiri? How do I make sure there's a omni-channel connection to Jiri, from email to LinkedIn to WhatsApp to Slack, variety of ways till I get attention from Jiri in a hyper-personalized conversation? How do I automate all of this? That's what Delight Engage would do. And so a lot of these utilities and modules is what Gifty uses overlaying, right? So Gifty as an agent has access to these tools to be able to do the right gift at the right time to the right person, uh, so that the marketing manager can get that connection built with that end prospect. So that's kind of how we decompose internally and kind of build it in a more predictable model, right? So that's the one we have right now. Your second question on what are we thinking and where are we heading, our next step is to kind of build Yvette. We call her fondly Yvette internally, and we may use that word externally as well. But that's the name of our agent. Just like Gifty is an agent that focuses on gifts, events um, planning, right from what webinar should we be doing for this brand. If I want to launch a product X, how do I go launch that product based on what should be the narrative, what should be the title of the webinar, who should be the speakers, how do I even convince those speakers in the industry to come and speak with you, how do I create the landing pages, how do I create the setup on event portals. All of these things is what Yvette will automate within seconds. So you simply come and say, imagine a prompt, a chat GPT prompt that says, hey, here's my budget. I need 1,500 leads to be invited so that I can get 50 registrations or 100 registrations for my webinar. That's all. You leave the chat prompt and let Yvette do the entire planning for you. And then if you like the plan, you simply say, yep, okay, you will now go execute the plan behind the scenes. And this is what I mean by the teammate approach, right? So this is now your extension of an event manager who's now going to help this event manager become much more efficient, much more faster, much more predictable. And so that's what Yvette will do, and that's what we're working on right now.
All right, perfect. So, yeah, a lot of exciting ideas, a lot of great recommendations, a great story that's behind you, Pinkesh. So thank you very much for being my guest today. Before we say goodbye, maybe you can share where people can follow you, where you're the most active. Is it LinkedIn?
It is LinkedIn. Yeah, I am not very active on other channels, um fortunately or unfortunately, and so LinkedIn is the best way to connect. But take a look at Delight Loop, and you can ping me anytime at pinkesh@delightloop.com. Happy to get suggestions, happy to get ideas, happy to get people who are passionate about this space to come join us in the journey as we build a autonomous marketing platform, helping every CMO, every CRO kind of build pipeline, build leads predictably. So looking forward to connecting with each one of you.